Okay, hey everybody. We are here with my friend across multiple social media platforms. I think we're connected on everything. Are we
Yes.
friends on Facebook? I know we're in the same Facebook group, but
Right. If not, we will be after this.
by the end of this call, we will rectify that
Right.
that oversight. I'm joined today by Harrison Soup Campbell, so I will call him that per his preference. And since we are new friends, I will respect that preference. So we're here with Soup Campbell, Director of Product Marketing and Brand Development with ZeeMee. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So I want to start with kind of where you got where did you start your career? How did you start your career? You've kind of I looked at your LinkedIn profile. You've got a really interesting career in that you've done a lot of admissions work. You spent a lot of time in the higher ed space. Where did you go to school, and what did you go to school for? We'll start there.
Yeah, so definitely, yeah. If you looked at my LinkedIn, it's a bizarre roadmap of experiences, but it all really surrounds education. My whole life has been education. I have a parent that was a career-long educator, so most of everything I've done has been around that focus. And so I did my undergrad at Indiana University. Secondary education. So for about 5 or 6 years, I taught middle school, high school social studies. And then I made a transition at some point, kind of from teaching into higher ed enrollment management, and kind of stumbled into that. No one goes to school, no one goes to undergrad to become a professional admissions officer, things like that, or student affairs officer. Like, we all somehow stumble into it. And I fell in love with working in higher ed in that environment. It was still education. I was still working with students. It was just, I was helping students navigate that transition from high school to college. And from there, while I was at Indiana State University working there, I did a master's program there in student affairs, higher ed administration. But one of the things for me that's always been unique, and people always ask me this question, like, how is it that you're working for this company, managing brand and social media and being a content creator and doing all these bizarre things? Like, you were a junior high social studies teacher. And the thing is that it's just, that has always been my passion, digital media and creating. And that's always been a part of me. And I've always leveraged that in all the roles I've had, even though I've had no formal education in these areas. And so I think with that experience, it's always kind of created opportunities. And so when I have a chance to talk to college students, I always tell them, don't feel like, your major, your degree will always lock you into something. If you've got a skill set, if there's something you're passionate about and you're able to show how you can really use it and leverage it, there'll be opportunities out there for you in the future.
Absolutely. So I love the fact, so the resonating theme that I'm interpreting based on my knowledge of you is this concept of transition. Transition in your career between disciplines to new ideas and new concepts, and really transitional exploration is the phrase that I would use. And I think that's a really great sort of way to label it. To your point, if you go to school for business, you don't always have to be in business. You could go into the humanities and do something completely unrelated. For example, I have 3 degrees in graphic design, and now I'm running undergraduate marketing basically for the business school at Pitt. And I'm doing a ton of writing, and that's wonderful because I love writing, but typically designers, they're not writing. So I get to try new things and explore my creative talents through that particular lens. And the same applies with you. So it's like you go to school, you get that degree, and then you started teaching, which, kudos to you. High school, middle school, elementary school teaching is hard. You have to have a lot of patience, but you also kind of have to take a beating, a figurative beating when you're doing that. So, more power to you, but it is by no means the thing that you have to do for 30 years.
Right.
And, entrepreneurs themselves, they don't fit that mold. Like some of
Right.
the people that have some of the wealthiest people have the most successful companies, they didn't have a business. They don't necessarily have a business degree, so.
Right.
So that's wonderful. And, ultimately, and I think you would agree with this, so long as, you're happy and you're healthy, right? Like you could be doing anything.
Absolutely. Yeah, no doubt. I think, for me, I'm in that Gen Xer, range. And I think, I look at like my parents, and it's kind of coming from a generation where that, people found something that they were going to do, and they did that for 30 years, 40 years. And that was very common and very normal. And I think today, it's not to say that that can't still happen, and that, will happen for some people in their careers, but I think, you just don't see that much anymore. I mean, you see today, you have to have that ability to be nimble and make adjustments and transition. And so I think all the things that you can do to develop a skill set that lends itself to that, will only benefit you, down the road. And so, sorry, I mean, there's so many opportunities, and just, the more connections you make and the more people that you meet, and it just always gives you an opportunity for those doors to open. And if you would have asked me years ago, like, you're going to be working for this, this awesome tech startup company, and you're going to be, I would have like, are you crazy? Like, I don't know anything about entrepreneurship. I don't know, like, there's no way. And so, it's hard to see kind of down the road where you can end up. But if you just always have that mindset of like, I'm just open, like I want to enjoy the moment I'm in, and I want to be, all into whatever I'm doing right now, but I want to always be open to, if that door opens, to not necessarily be afraid to maybe take that step, because it could be, a great new opportunity that will lead to another great opportunity down the road.
And how do you feel about being in the startup space?
Oh,
Isn't it
crazy.
incredible?
It's unbelievable, especially transitioning from higher education. So
yes.
those of us that work or have spent any time working in higher education, whether it's on the faculty side or whether it's on the staff side, administration side, it's, higher ed institutions tend to kind of move along at a certain pace. And, you would think these should be institutions that are, cutting edge and always on the forefront, out in front of everything. But really a lot of times they kind of lag behind a little bit, sometimes, when you compare them maybe to other industries. So
you're being generous.
Yeah.
You're being generous. Yeah.
Right. So the transition from higher ed all of a sudden to this, tech world environment, was crazy. And I'm about 2 years in now at ZeeMee. And I still find myself certain days like, wow, this pace is just crazy. And it's just, terminology I never knew before on the dev side. We have, we do 2-week sprints, and then we, the dev team is product updates. So, it's like, it's this constant, quick, fast paced cycle. And then there's that level of uncertainty, I mean, with a startup, I mean, things are going really well for our company now, but with a startup, you never know. I mean, we could, we're here today and things are great, but we might not be here, a month from now. And so it's like that, you have to have a certain type of mentality to be able to be okay in that type of an environment of such uncertainty. So it's been great. I look back over things I've had the opportunity to do, and I'm really just thankful, because all of those opportunities just led to another door opening, and couldn't be more happier, and love that I was never afraid to kind of just take those steps and see what would come of it.
Well, your story reminds me of not only my own sort of career, especially within the past year and a half, but also this idea of staying in a job for 30 years. So that's what our parents did. That is, in some cases, that is still possible for a lot of people, fortunately. But on the other hand, like, I'm okay with that not being the case. I like the fact that I think people should move around and not be complacent and stagnant and not be afraid to transition into new positions, especially if they're really interested in having a career, and, having that define an aspect of themselves as if it were, it's a part of their identity. I did this thing and this thing and this thing, it's points of pride. So, but not only that, but the accumulative buildup of skills and experiences, at a certain point, and I know you'll appreciate this, if you're in higher ed, you hit a point where you can't go any higher. And so, like, you were the dean of admissions at this city university, I forget what it's called. And it's like, that might be as far as you can go without having a PhD.
Right.
And even then, once you get that PhD, you're not going to want to stay in that job because your prospects are on the upper administration. And
Right.
that's I won't say that's rarefied air, but it takes a very special person to want to be a staff side executive administrator.
Right.
Because those are not necessarily jobs that people envy, and that's also why they have higher salaries, right?
Right. Right.
But in higher ed, you definitely tap out at a certain point, so you could have been the dean for the next 30 years.
Right. Right.
And, for some people that's okay, but like, if you have a lot of energy and experience and ambition, those careers, they don't last. And I relate to that completely because I was faculty side for over a decade. And it's just like, okay, I kind of done everything I wanted to at this institution that I was at and decided to move on. And there's an inherent risk in what I did and with what you did. Because, I was tenured faculty, tenured positions have been on the downswing since the 70s. So I got a fair amount of flack from people for saying, like, why would you give that up? Are you an idiot?
Right. Right.
And inversely, like, you're the dean of admissions at this place. And I'm thinking, like, that sounds like a great gig. Why would you give that up? And it's because you hit that ceiling. And that's just the nature of higher ed. So, kudos to you for being willing to make the jump.
Yeah. I mean, and there's always trade-offs. I mean, for me in higher ed, on the administrative side, coming from the lens and the background of someone that's just truly an educator and wants to be with students and wants to be making a difference in the lives of students, there's a huge trade-off because the higher you go up that ladder in higher ed on the administrative side, the less and less you are connected with students. And it's just, and so for me personally, even if those opportunities had presented themselves, for me, it would have been really tough because I know I would be getting more and more disconnected from what I love. And that's just being able to work with students. And, and so, so there's always these kind of unique trade-offs and things that you've got to consider. But I think, you just, don't second guess yourself. And, you've got great gut instincts. And, sometimes I've always told students, we all have these amazing, intuition and gut instincts. And, sometimes you just have to trust kind of what you're feeling inside and not be afraid to kind of make that step.
Absolutely. I wholeheartedly agree with that. But fortunately for folks like you and I, we kind of have a fail safe with respect to higher ed is always hiring, always. So we could easily, like, if I left, you've left, we could both easily transition back into that space fairly seamlessly.
Yep.
That might be an arrogant comment. I don't know, but I mean.
No, I mean, that's just accurate. I mean, that's,
Yeah. So, you're in ZeeMee, you're in the startup space. I envy the excitement that you get from being in that space. I've run 4 companies, sold 3. I'm on my 4th now, which is this guy right here. And I love thriving in that space. So I think I'll always be running some kind of hustle.
Right.
Yeah. So can you tell me about, like, what it feels like to be an integral part of ZeeMee? and knowing that the success of the company is, you know, built on the success of everyone in it, no matter their role, big or small.
Yeah. So, I mean, let me go back just a little bit. When I first started with ZeeMee, and actually what's crazy is one of the two founders for the company, and our co-founder Adam is still with the company now, literally just hit me up on LinkedIn and said, "Hey, I think we connected at a conference at some point in the past. Like,
Wow. Okay.
I see all the stuff that you do and leveraging, all this crazy stuff you're doing with social media, to engage these prospective students, and like the things that you do to kind of create brand." And he's like, would you ever, like, have you ever thought about maybe like transitioning over? And so like that's how it first started. It wasn't even there was a job posting, and I, had to go through
Right.
this application process. So that's how I first even got kind of connected with ZeeMee. But what they primarily were struggling with when I came on board was the company started originally as this really cool web-based platform that high school students could use to upload video, photo content about their kind of their academic experience, their extracurriculars, and they could provide that link of all that content when they went to apply to college. So, there was a space on the Common App where they could put that. So, I mean, it was a way to kind of show who I really am in this beyond just what my SAT or ACT or my GPA says. So that's how the company started. But the product is so different now. And at some point in there, ZeeMee made a decision to kind of flip a switch and change from what it was, which every student in the country loved. All of these high school counselors loved it because it was this free tool. They could help their students. And then ZeeMee just made this decision. No, we're going completely mobile app now. We're bringing on all this stuff. And they didn't really think about how that was going to impact, how high school counselors were going to feel about that. So basically, long story short, the brand was just really damaged. And, what was once this amazing tool, now a lot of people were like, why didn't you listen to us? Like, we didn't want it to be like that. And you just made this change and you didn't even tell us. And so really what I spent my first year at ZeeMee doing was just rebuilding the brand and, helping people out there understand, like, you're right. That is who we were.
Right.
We did make some mistakes and we're owning it, but here's who we are now. And we want to re-engage with you. And we do want to be your platform, and we do want to listen to you. And so yeah, I've spent a lot of time just working on kind of rebuilding the brand for the company, especially out in kind of the social spaces, so that more people are like, one, we actually know what it is you guys do, and two, it's like you're not a company, you're more of like just this personality, that we want to work with. Like I feel like now there's a lot of people that are like, maybe I don't know everything about ZeeMee, but gosh, I see Soup all the time, and like it'd be cool to work with that guy. Right. And so that's a lot of kind of what we've tried to do, is just really enhancing the brand of the company.
You're introducing the personalities of the company into the product or service itself.
Absolutely.
Which in a sense is really clever because it makes you all linchpins and very specific investors, right? But it also creates a humanistic point of relation that, I got a problem, I'll just call Soup. Right. Whatever it is, there he is. I can rely on you, as opposed to having to deal with an AI chatbot to work through some tech issues. So the customer service aspect of that is really on point. And, that takes a ton of energy to do, but it's also the right thing to do, because ultimately what is the purpose of ZeeMee? I mean, to build relationships between people, right?
Yeah.
So, you're walking the walk, you're talking the talk. So, can you give me some ideas on like strategies or techniques or tactics that you used with managing the ZeeMee brand, and how you helped repair its identity?
Yeah, so I think the first strategy was just leveraging, I was one of the first individuals to come on board on ZeeMee that actually came from higher ed. And so I think ZeeMee got to a place at a company where they're like, maybe it would make sense for us to just like have a member of our team that actually
Right.
has lived and understands that culture and that language. And so I think, one of my first strategies was just leveraging that experience, those connections, those relationships to start to kind of to bridge some connections there between what was looked at as like this vendor. Those of us that work on the college side, a lot of times you'll see things like, oh, these vendors, there's another vendor is emailing me about their amazing product, and why don't they understand? I don't have time to listen to you vendors. And so, and higher ed, especially higher ed enrollment management, is relatively this tight-knit kind of small community. Like we all know each other, we all talk. If you're a company that's a really good, that's built, like everybody knows that's a great company, and whether you work with them or not. And so like, yeah, I think that primary first strategy was, can I start to build some relationships and bridge the gap between higher ed looking at this as like this company, and the company just looking at higher ed as like, this is just potential revenue. We've got to get it. No, let's actually just build relationship. Whether the college ever partners with us or not, we should still want to be engaged with. We should still want to be a thought leader in this space. I mean, we've got hundreds of thousands of teenagers that use our social media app. Why can't we still position ourselves as like, hey, you want to know what kids are thinking right now? Like we could actually tell you what kids are thinking right now because we're watching it happen 24/7. And so some of that just like, let's position us in the space to try to serve this community, to try to provide them data or information on what kids are doing, what they're thinking, whether they want to partner with us or not. And so, so that's where it's evolved. And I think I told the story to someone the other day when I first started at ZeeMee. One of the things they asked me to do was they're like, okay, you know everyone, you know everyone in college admissions. Can you like just hop on? And I was like, yes, I do. Like you want sales? Let's go. Like these people love me. And so one of the first, it was so humbling. So, I mean, I get on the phone. Yeah. I'm letting all my fellow colleagues know like, hey, I've just transitioned. I'm at ZeeMee now. Like, let's get this going. And all of a sudden, crickets. Nobody's answering their phone. It's like, and it was so humbling because, I even thought, well, shoot, this will be easy because I've got relationships. So even for me, like there was like this learning curve was like, no, it's not just going to happen like that. It's going to take some time and some patience, and
you have to rebuild all of those relationships basically.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, building a brand from scratch is one thing. Repairing a brand that's had some damage is an entirely different thing. It's tough. It takes time.
And you need to reframe the context under which you know these people now too.
Right.
So that's a whole other conversation to have that implies like, yeah, I got to teach you about what I do and how it's done. And you can go through the typical sales process with respect to that. So yeah, I understand where you're coming from because like, with each of the companies that I've operated, I've done sales and client relationship management and everything. In a startup, you do everything.
You do everything. Yes.
So, one day it's, all right, I'm managing nothing but product output. Today, I'm only doing finances. Tomorrow, I'm only doing sales reps and et cetera. Yep. So, what's the least favorite thing you like to do in the startup sphere?
Gosh, least favorite.
There's an opportunity to turn this negative into a positive.
Yeah. It's a tough question because.
Can I answer it for you?
Yeah.
Do you work in an office with people or are you remote?
Oh, well, yeah. So our company is based in Silicon Valley. We're Redwood City, California, just south of San Francisco. About half of our team is there physically.
Okay.
at HQ, but then about half of us are remote all around the world. So I'm remote. I'm in Southern
Okay.
Indiana. And so I had to make a transition. If you know anything about college, university admissions people, I mean, they are social butterfly.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're
Extroverted.
yes.
Absolutely.
And so, yeah, I think I was really nervous about that transition at first, and it did take some adjustment. But one of the things that I discovered is on the college side, as a dean of admissions, I would find the only time I could really be productive is if I came in at 5 a.m. and I was there hours before my staff got in, or if I came in on a Saturday when
Mm-hmm.
staff. I mean, those were the times. Or if I stayed late after work, those were the times I could get work done, because during the 9 to 5, you're being pulled in every different direction.
Right.
You're putting out fires. You're being pulled into this meeting. You're here. You're there. So one of the positives that I actually discovered from working remote is how extremely productive I can be when a lot of those distractions are eliminated. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that was probably, if I had to pick the one thing that was kind of a weird and made me nervous at first, or actually one of the only things that made me kind of hesitant was, will I be able to be okay in this kind of remote environment when I've never done that? I've always been one of those that had to be engaging kind of, with people 24/7, but it's been great. And
Mm-hmm.
it allows me the flexibility and the autonomy to really, I mean, there is no 9 to 5 in a startup. And certainly with what I do for our company, there isn't a 9 to 5. Now, some people wouldn't be able to handle that. But again, when the work is what you're passionate about and you love wearing all those different hats, I never took a course in my life on web design. And I
Sure.
was the front end dev for, one of the new landing pages of our site that we rolled out. So I mean, just knowing that's like, I could take that, I could own that project and do it. I mean, it's just that for someone like me, like I love having that opportunity. So that's been really, really rewarding.
Well, I think part of this, the shift in working in general, especially with the latest generation, those that are about to graduate, is that, yeah, a lot of them are nervous about that first time job. They'll get it. They'll find something, right? Eventually, they'll determine whether or not they actually feel valued in the job that they have.
Right.
In some cases, if they do, they stay, or they don't, they find another competitive gig. I feel like a lot of people are wanting to place effort on being important and critical to a company, even if maybe they aren't, but they at least feel that way. And that's actually an aspect of good management, like, in my opinion. Like, make people feel valued, give them additional responsibilities if you think they can take it on to help build out their skill set and help them grow, and eventually they'll move on. Everyone does, in some respects. But in that startup world, you're doing everything. And if it's important to you to feel like you're mission critical, that if you aren't there, the whole thing falls apart. One, you really got to like check your ego on that. I'm not saying feeling that way is a bad thing. It's just, if it's misinterpreted or executed poorly, then that's a problem. And that startup scene can be very thrilling, especially if it's all riding on you. And, and maybe you can supplement this thought. So I may have some students graduate that go right into a startup career, right? Either maybe they start a company, or they get onboarded or recruited into, a moderately sized startup. It's still within its first 5 years. And they become that linchpin, similar to your role. And let's say they wash out, right? They decide, you know what, startup culture is not for me anymore. I can't handle this waking up in the middle of the night. Not that happens, but being on call practically all the time. They're going to be able to transition into different types of jobs and careers a bit easier, because like they hit the wall at 1,000 miles an hour at the end of their first year after graduation. So it's like, if you can take that on and and carry that stress on your shoulders, but also own it and lean into it, then you can pretty much handle anything.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt. I think, yeah, just to, I try to go, I mean, I'm old now, so I know that the college students watching this, I mean, I know like I'm the old guy now, but I try to go back to when I was that age, and it's scary, and I know it can be scary, and especially, my goodness, with the way things are even now. I can't even begin to imagine what a college senior is feeling right now in this climate that we're in. But I feel like you just have to, one, be confident, be confident in what you've learned, be confident in your skill set, and be willing to be vulnerable, be willing to, acknowledge that you're not going to know everything. You're not going to have all the answers. I think one of the things that I've been extremely fortunate with at every step of every opportunity I've had, I've worked with some great people, some great leadership that I wanted to look at as a mentor. And I wanted to be, I wanted to be mentored. I wanted to like have that relationship. I wanted to learn. And I think it's always can, like, wherever you are, have a hand that's reaching up and making a connection, and have a hand that's reaching back behind you, and like always be in kind of both spaces. Always have someone that you can look towards, that you trust, that you can kind of have a great relationship with as a mentor. But maybe when you're 2 years out after graduation, maybe be a part of some type of group or community where you're still maybe, giving back, giving some tips back to those college juniors or seniors. And there's so much of what we do in all of these things is so much of it's about just relationships. If you can, if you build great relationships, and you always will have opportunities there. And I could sit here for hours and just go on and on and on about just, people that have opened a door for me, or, because of just, something where a relationship was made. And so, yeah, I mean, don't be afraid. Like and don't be afraid to fail. Very, very few people, I think, what we don't often talk about a lot is, what, I've been fired from previous jobs. I mean, like, I've had things like that have happened in my career. No one ever talks about those because they don't want to be vulnerable or really transparent enough to say, but like, like, there's been times that in my career where I've lost a job, and, and that doesn't define who you are. That doesn't define what the rest of your career is going to be. Right. And so, like, you have to treat every experience, find the positive in every experience. And you don't know, that one door that got closed might have gotten closed for a reason, because this ZeeMee is going to hire, is going to come calling, and all of a sudden you're going to be doing something you never even dreamed of. So it's scary, it's stressful, but just be in the moment and just be all in, make those relationships, and you'll be fine.
While listening to you talk, I recalled a tweet I saw earlier today. You might have seen it. And it was, some of the most successful companies that exist today were founded in the last recession.
Yeah.
Uber included. So, it stands to reason that, like, hey, maybe, since higher ed is taking such a huge beating right now, I mean, it was previous to the outbreak. I mean, enrollment was declining, colleges were closing, departments were being folded, programs were being merged. And then up comes along coronavirus and just does like a fatality finishing move to higher ed. And now it's even worse, which means your product is even more of a hook and necessity, frankly.
Right.
It, like, you guys in Campus Sonar and a few of the other companies out there, Handshake, etc. You all do different things, but you're all just very, very necessary, because, I mean, higher ed, in my opinion, was losing touch with what made themselves special, any given university. And it became less about teaching people and more about just enrollment. And, you know, if that's one of the reasons why you left, then no one's going to blame you, right?
Right.
But nevertheless, hopefully this will help higher ed in general get back in touch with its mission, with its roots, and, you know, not endlessly sprawl and create new things. Like, you know,
Right.
maybe it's going to, you know, not live beyond its limits, so to speak.
Yeah,
So
I hope so. It's
yeah.
certainly making everyone take a step back right now and really rethink how we've been doing this in higher ed. You know,
Mhm.
and just like you said, I think, you know, ZeeMee might have been looked at before as like, oh, it's kind of a luxury. We don't need it, but that's, you know, it's great if we have it. And I think
Mhm.
now there's a lot of colleges and universities that are thinking, yeah, maybe it is needed right now. I mean, if you know, and so I think it's, yeah, you can look at a negative situation and you can see that, yeah, hopefully it you know, it spurs some change and some deeper thinking, and just the models, you know, college admissions really hasn't changed for decades. It's been
It hasn't.
the
It's stagnant.
same thing. And so
Yeah.
maybe this is an opportunity where, you know, enrollment leaders can start to think, you know, is it time for it to look different? Is it
Mhm.
time, you know, do we have to keep requiring this standardized test that, you know, I
Right.
mean, you know, so I think you're starting to see a lot of universities trying to wrap their head around, how can this look different? How can this whole process of a high school student transitioning to a college university, can that model change? Can it look different? And so, you know, ZeeMee is one of those that's just kind of in that space where I think people are
Right.
looking like, yeah, maybe there are some things we can do different here. And so that is exciting to know that there could be some potential change there, even though we're going through a really tough situation.
Well, you know, look at the signaling. Many universities are dropping their SATs.
Yep.
A lot of them, graduate schools are hurting too. They're dropping GREs. Like, you
Yep.
don't even. I've never taken the SAT or the GRE, and
Wow.
I made my way up to a PhD level.
That's awesome.
Okay, and it's in how you understand the systems.
Right.
So students are becoming more savvy, and they're also focusing more on their finances. So it stands to reason, like, a four-year university is going to drop their SATs and their GREs, right?
Right.
Okay, that's going to bring people in the door. But I want to see community colleges thrive a bit more, because the articulation agreements between community colleges as feeders for bigger universities. So someone goes and gets an associate degree, transfers in 90 credits to a four-year institution. They walk out of there with 2 degrees, which makes them a more attractive candidate, right?
Oh yeah.
And then they could actually transition right into a graduate program, and who knows how far, without actually having to do that. Talk about the journey. You would see more people doing that, you know,
Right. Right.
and saving money too, I think, in the long run. So there's kind of that journey that's interesting to me. And it's all relegated on conservation of finances, excuse me.
Yeah. No doubt.
Saving as much money as possible. And then the other aspect is the outbreak is proving to everybody just exactly how unnecessary it is to go to a brick and mortar place to work or learn. So I've been seeing a lot of inquiries regarding online learning exclusively.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Exclusively. So I'm hoping that higher ed will see those signals and say, like, okay, well, we have a ton of interest in a graphic design program. Let's just do it all online.
Yeah.
And they may see a lot of numbers from that. And, you know, that means that they can start selling, you know, or renting out space to startup companies because they don't need an academic hall anymore or whatever.
Right.
So
Right.
yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if some of that happens. I know that just today, SCAD, Savannah College of Art and Design, which is my alma mater, they just closed their Hong Kong outpost. They had a whole school in Hong Kong that they closed. Part of it was the coronavirus, but a lot of it was just universities, I think, overextending their reach.
Right.
on top of the fact that they're an arts-driven school, arts aren't
Right.
necessarily hiring right now. So it is what it is. So,
Yeah.
Well, we're coming up at the end of our time, and I apologize for taking the the last few minutes to get that mumbling out. But
No, you're fine.
I think that a lot of my students are going to be interested in learning more about the startup culture, the startup space, especially as they enter this, present coronavirus economy.
Right.
How can they get a hold of you, learn more about ZeeMee, and maybe learn more about the startup culture?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, guys, feel free on most channels. I believe I'm at Soup Campbell 76. I mean, if you're searching, if you just search Harrison Soup Campbell, you'll find me. But please feel free. I don't mind any of you connecting with me on LinkedIn. I stay pretty active on Twitter. And one of the things I do love about, sometimes Silicon Valley gets a bad rap, and you hear, often it's, what bleeds leads. So we know, like, typically, you're only going to hear negative things. But what I've discovered is it's kind of a cool, tight-knit community. And just in my short time at ZeeMee, and again, it's not anything, bragging on my end but like if ZeeMee closed like today, there would be people in other companies in Silicon Valley, like immediately, trying to get me on, like, hey, we noticed things kind of shutting down there at ZeeMee. Where are you headed next? Mm-hmm. So I think just becoming a part of this kind of, community and connecting with, with me, with other people that, that are in that space, we love to try to help. And, even people that have previously worked for us at ZeeMee are now at Facebook or Amazon or, these places. So it's just like, we've got great connections, and we can always pick that, that phone up and like, hey, like, I've got this student that's just graduated. Like, where can we get them plugged in? Like, this is what they're wanting to do. Who do we need to talk to? Right. And so, like, yes, feel free. I would love for you guys to stay connected, and I'll always, help in any way I can, if it's an introduction or open a door for you guys.
Well, I have some students that are from California. They may come back home, so I'll have them hit you up. But thank you again, Soup, for your time. This was great. We'll check in with you maybe in a couple weeks or a month or so. We'll see how far this goes. I just wanted to talk to people during my downtime, and I've talked to so many people, and I've learned a lot. And your contributions are just fantastic. So thank you again for your time.
Awesome. Hey, it's absolutely my pleasure. This has been a great break for me, just to get away from regular business and work stuff. So I just appreciate the opportunity, and best of luck to all you students. Hang in there. I know it's a crazy time, but I believe great things are to come for all of you. So please keep in touch.
And if he said it, it must be true.
That's right.
Yeah. Thanks, man.